is Ivan. It says we're recording, and I believe we're live. Let me go ahead and bring up the screen that we'll be sharing today. And this is the second module in our 8-week course. It's an introduction to work that I've been working on for a couple of years now, a vision to put together a course based on some materials that I've been studying for years and living the principles. So with that in mind, I want to go to our next slide and kind of get us into this. Welcome everybody that might be tuning in, watching this live recording, and after it's posted. So just want to welcome you for tuning in. And my name is Ivan Sims. We're working on a thing called, bite-sized nuggets of learning here at lunchtime. So you can see we have a hungry bunch that is anxious for us to get started here. So today, again, I'm just going to restate. This is the second module in an 8-week or an 8-module course that I'm putting together. This is meant to be just an introduction. It's not going to go into great depth, but it's more of an outline of what the vision includes. So start out on Wednesdays at lunchtime. We may move it to a Friday, depending on what works best for our our guest panelists that come on to talk about their interesting topics. And if you'd like to be on a guest participant on here to share what you're doing, you can contact me at the information that will be included later on, and there will be a PDF actually in the Facebook group that's connected here, and we'll give you all those links and everything. So without any further ado, last week we talked about discovering your hidden treasure in your field of dreams, and that basically was just the introduction of becoming proactive in taking responsibility for our life, and dream a dream and dream big, and don't hold back. Go for it. So today is the second part in this, and you may see some similarities from where I've gleaned a lot of this from. But today we're talking about the 4 roles of leadership. So once you have a dream and a vision, then that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. So, and as an added benefit to those that are tuning in and becoming members of our Facebook group, just want to extend the opportunity here. We have a private social learning Facebook group where I'm uploading and archiving the materials that will go into here that you can download for free once you become a member of that group. So what I'm offering as a free benefit is an example here on the right is the free banner ads. For those of you that are in business, whether you're a marketing manager for a company or you're self-employed and you'd like to be able to promote your business and what you do, your services, your products, that kind of thing, well, I do banner ads, and these are used for social media. You can go on your web page, you can go on your blogs. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but just so you know, that's up front. That's one of your benefits. Okay, materials. We've got our Actions by Design fan page is where these are streaming live to. And you can also join the Getting from X to Y Facebook group. Once you go there and become a member of the group, then you can enter the Ambassadors Lounge social learning group. It's a closed private group that no one can see except the members. We're archiving the recordings of our live webinars found on Actions by Design YouTube channel. This is where I will take the recording. I'll do a little bit of editing and cut out the excess and make it a little more palatable, upload it to YouTube channel. All right. And then my contact information, here's my email address if you'd like to follow up with me afterwards. And okay, I'm looking for some tools here. Cursor, there we go. That will help you see my arrow where I'm pointing here a little bit easier. Okay, so again, there's my email address. You can contact me there if you have questions or would like to volunteer for being a guest participant in one of the upcoming weeks. And we'll give you the outline of what's coming up. So if there's a topic that you feel would be particularly relevant to what you have to share, then we can talk about getting you on that week. All right. So again, the objective here is just to give you an outline, some basic food for thought in a nutshell format, because we're at lunchtime and we know you have to get back to work. So the first 7 minutes here is kind of me just talking, waiting for people to come online. Once everybody's online, then I can really go into the outline. So we want to become a life-giving, synergistic organization, knowing that we are all born to win. That's kind of a tagline, but that's really what the objective is. We want to help others become great at what they do. The goal in mind is our mission is to help align what we do with what we love. That goes for those that are listening in as well. That's our goal for you, to overcome the contradictions in the process. So we all run into roadblocks and obstacles, and we recognize that problems are really opportunities to discover the hidden treasures others overlook and pass by. So problem solvers have solutions to create opportunities. That is a big statement. We endeavor to fulfill that. So here's just an idea of what I mean by being a life-giving organization. This is what they call the 5 waves of trust, and you'll see that the 5 waves begin with self and expand in the ripple effect to relationships and organizational. So those that are part of an organization to become relevant in the marketplace and our society. It's all about starting here. So when we talk about trust, this is a diagram that illustrates 4 areas of our life that I call it a footprint, because you see this red line here. Wherever we spend most of our time functioning in, could be logistically, getting from here to there and delivering things and fulfilling obligations, that kind of thing. The emotional side is more about our social relationships and how we relate there. Spiritual side is, again, that is a unique footprint that some may be more focused on than others, more aware of than others. It is a very real aspect and realm, because there's a deep need that goes along with that. Everybody has a need to leave something behind, like a legacy, and how they want to be remembered. So that comes under this category. Competence is where we develop our skills, we learn, we'll study for years in school and gain experience at what we do. It's all about developing those skills and those habits that develop trust. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and we'll talk about the format for our webinar now. Week 1, as I said before, this was an intro to being life-giving, the series, and we were discovering our field of dreams, uncovering those hidden treasures that we may not even be aware of. And so discovering our gifts, our talents, the skills that we want to develop over a lifetime to be productive and proactive in what we do, and leading up to the 8th habit, which is the 8th module of this course, and finding your voice and becoming great. So we'll talk about that later. Here again is that footprint. So wherever you find yourself, your strengths, where you mostly function in, some, you might call it IQ over here, you might call it EQ here. You get an idea of where the ripple effect in our lives, where we are most effective. Let's go on to the next one here. So here's our outline for the coming weeks. So here we are in week 2. We're talking about the 4 roles of leadership today. Next week is probably the most challenging for a lot of us, because it involves managing our lives, managing our work in the face of storms and the crisis that we face. And it can be very, very difficult to get past this portion here, but we all have to in order to get to the the realization of our dreams and our goals. So we'll talk about basically use a football analogy, moving the chains along the sideline. When you get a first down, you reset the chains for another 10 yards. So goals are incremental, and we'll go into that next week. Okay, the 4th week we have aligning our actions with our beliefs. And this is important too, because we want to think win-win. We want to provide something of value and relevance to those that are following us. You probably have experienced where your belief systems didn't line up with what you were required to do, and there was a cognitive dissonance, as a feeling of uneasiness in the pit of your stomach that you just couldn't line up with or go along with, and yet you had to in some cases just to survive. So that's where being proactive, you have the ability to make some decisions, make some choices that bring those things into alignment. Week 5 is, again, it's an important one. It's one that I have practiced for many years. It's being a reflective listener. So listening with an understanding heart, trying to understand the other side. So when we run into problems, and we'll talk about this more in next week and the following week, but when we run into problems or disagreements and we have two sides of the story, then how do we meet in the middle, and may involve mediation of some sort in order to not come to a compromise, but if we want a win-win, it's coming into alignment. So, and week 6 is really where we talk about becoming a synergistic life-giving organization. This one, week 6, is again talking about the waves of trust. That is an important one, and that is as far as we're going for right now. We have 2 more modules after week 6, and we'll discuss that in the coming weeks. So this week we want to talk about the 4 roles of leadership, and having a vision, and how do you fulfill that vision, and how do you impart that vision to others so that they can run with it as well. First off, when we are talking about a vision and the problems that we might run into, the 4 roles of leadership, we have to make this statement up front. Direction is more important than trying to solve the right problems. Now that might seem kind of strange at first, but if you think about it, let's say it's more like a fish trying to swim upstream. You feel the resistance. Let's say, for instance, the trends are going against us and we're trying to swim against those trends. That's where direction is more important than trying to solve those problems, because the problems are a direct result of the direction we're going. Here's the outline for the 4 roles. Basically, we've talked about the 5 waves of trust. So trustworthiness in action, it's equal to rapport and developing that with again, understanding heart. So it's not always about demanding my way. Number 2 on the list here would be pathfinding. And that's really where we're at right now. A lot of us, again, it's equal to coming into alignment and forging agreements. And it's always, discretion is always involved too. So especially in business realm, you don't necessarily want your plans made public until it's time. So we are about discretion, and so your privacy is important to us. All right, and number 3, again, we're talking about focus and execution. Here's the 2. So we can divide these 2. The first 2 are come into focus. So when we have a vision, we want to focus on what are we aiming for? What is the target we want to hit? And then the execution part of it will come into more into detail next week as we talk about managing our priorities. But the execution side of it is where we run into, we need to be aligned and aligning our habits to serve the mission that we're part of, because the mission is really the foundation of what we're doing. 4, and being empowered to produce success. Now, this is important too. It's because to execute the plan, just like a team would on a basketball court or a football field, you have to have the support to go forward and produce the end result. That's my definition for success, is achieving the desired end result. So in order to reach that end result and be successful, you need to have be supported in that and not undermined. And I have stories I could tell about work history where we were told to do something and we were totally undermined, and it was a setup for failure. So that's the kind of things we don't want to promote. We don't want to, perpetrate. We're all about win-win and being successful and making others successful with us. Okay, so when it comes to trustworthiness, now I've got notes that you'll find in the PDF file that I'm uploading to the fan page. But trustworthiness, I've already explained the footprint here. This is where it comes from. Really, this is an illustration from The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey, not Stephen Covey Sr., but his son. And comes from that book, and it talks about the roots of our character being manifest as what we see as above ground. And so the competence we talked about over here, the skills and the abilities and the trustworthiness, really comes from our character. And it's a manifestation of that. Success is achieving the desired results. So again, here, it all starts with our roots as to whether we get to that point where we end with what we had in mind. Okay, 2, the direction in pathfinding. The pain on this list here would represent those roots. If we have painful root issues that we aren't necessarily even aware of because they're under the surface, we feel them, but we don't necessarily understand what's causing it. So we want to get to that before we can address the problems and find the solution. Now, this quote was inspirational to me. I found this a couple weeks ago, and I didn't realize this because for years I knew I was an analytical personality type, and that I always went about solving problems analytically, pros and cons, this versus that, what's the benefits versus the negatives, and use that, when I go to make a purchase or when I try to make decisions in my life. But recently, and as a designer of content and media for marketing small businesses, video content in particular, I've become a designer, and the creative side of my personality has been tapped into. So designers approach problem solving a little bit differently, where they have what's called synthesis, and we talked about this a little bit ago, is that when you have a thesis and an antithesis, opposing views, let's say, and you're on two different sides of the fence, how do you come to a synthesis in the middle? That is how designers solve problems, and there's a time for that. We can talk about that more in the next couple of weeks. So in this case, direction and pathfinding is about discovering your gifts, the things you were born with, the way you're wired, what makes you tick, and what energizes you rather than drains your energy. So that those kinds of things is where we want to focus, and where we all want to focus on our strengths, that actually we love doing those things, and we're energized and empowered by those when we do those things. So we want to find your voice, and that includes discovering your gifts. That's that hidden treasure in the field of dreams again. So a lot of people aren't even aware of what their strong points, their gifts are. They've studied and they've been taught to do a certain job, but it's really not that fulfilling for them. And so over a course of a lifetime, you want to understand where you're really gifted. Now, again, vision, that's where we begin. So if you have a dream, a vision, something that you really want to accomplish, you've got to start with the vision. You've got to write it down. It's got to include some goals. You got to break it down into small bite-sized pieces, like we're trying to do here with this eight-week module. So like I say, the vision for this came about 2 years ago, and I've been working on this for a long time, just trying to develop the content. Believe me, I've had some setbacks, some disruptions, and that's why it's taken me 2 years to get to this point. But today, like I say, this is an outline. I'm trying to get this out, get this recorded. It's not the end all by any means, but it was an effort just to get this down and recorded. So going to keep track of the time here. We're at about 1:45, so I started late. We'll try and have you back to lunch here before the top of the hour. And so we'll continue here with what does it mean to find your voice. So you have a vision, then it requires the discipline to move forward. That's again like the football analogy, moving the chains, right? You have to have goals. You have to measure those goals. They have to be quantifiable. The passion that is required to accomplish these things is like hot water, and you've probably seen the 212 degrees example of what happens to water at 212 degrees. It turns to steam. Steam is powerful because it can power a locomotive. So our passion is like that. And that's what it takes. When I say what energizes you, how are you wired to do certain things that you love, those are the things that are going to give you the ability to continue on and persevere through the hard times. So the fourth aspect of your voice then is your conscience, your inner voice. Really, that's what it amounts to. It's your self-talk. Sometimes it's easier to talk ourselves out of doing something than and make excuses not to do it and procrastinate than it is to talk ourselves through it. So that's where this comes in, and it helps to have a moral and an ethical compass for us to follow. So following principles based on that and not tossed around by everything that might come along. Okay, so I've spent a lot of time on that. The third one, again, is aligning our habits to serve the mission. This is very important because our mindsets, this again, our self-talk and our outlook on life really will determine how we live. That's where alignment comes in. We have to align our mission, our purpose in life. Then our outlook in life has to contribute to that. If our mindsets are negative, let's say, towards something, this is kind of an internal trend. If we're trying to accomplish something, but our inner mindsets are against that and opposed to it, then it's really tough to make things happen that way. And so here's an analogy that has been around for a long time, and I've used it. Sow a thought. This is where it all begins. You reap your actions. Your actions are results of your thoughts. And if we're going to think win-win, we need to know how to do that and think those kinds of thoughts. Now, not everybody is going to do that. If I use the sports analogy again, our culture, our society is very win-lose oriented, performance oriented. You are either going to win or you're going to lose. And so thinking this way, win-win, is a paradigm shift for many of us. And this is where we will run into opposition and adversity because of the contrary way of thinking. So when we enter into something, we have a vision, we begin to build something, we need to count that cost of what is the positive or the negative opportunity. If it's an opportunity we want to pursue and we want to enter into, there's always a cost because it means that we're not going to be able to do something else. There's a cost of a lost opportunity as well. So if we miss the opportunity because we're already committed to something else, then those are things that we need to be aware of and either readjust our direction again or manage our priorities, shift some things around on our calendar. So that's all part of the bigger picture. Not time to go into all that right now. Again, sow a thought, because you begin with the end in mind, and we don't always see what the end results is going to look like, but we have an idea in the beginning of what the target is or what we desire. Again, that desire, that passion, that way we're wired to be empowered is really what carries us through those obstacles. Okay, so then the second part of this is once we sow an action enough times, we repeat it, it becomes a habit. Habits are what we want to develop, skills, abilities, based on principles, not just every whim that comes along. So some of these things need to be repeatable. And once you become confident and consistent and comfortable in these actions, then it becomes second nature for you to be able to do those things. That's why athletes train and train and train repetitiously, because that's the way habits are formed. You've heard the saying that it takes 30 days to establish a new habit. Well, that's true. You have to do it over and over again. We want to align what we do, our habits, with what we love, our desire. Habits lead to character. Again, we talked about the tree and the roots of the tree. So that's where our success, our destiny lies, is in the character that we develop and the habits that we practice. Because our character will lead to our destiny. And ultimately, that we talked about that spiritual need that everyone has, that everyone is born with, is the need to leave a legacy, or something behind when we leave this earth. And it's, how do we want to be remembered? So some people will spend a lifetime with that in mind, and they want to leave it to their kids, or they want to leave it to a nonprofit charity of their choice. It's all about what's important and how they want to be remembered. So the fourth thing here is being empowered to execute. And we talked about this earlier. And we've got comparative paradigms here, as you can see. Now, many of us, probably more so, there's more of us that have been employees of a company. We've worked for somebody else, more so than those that are self-employed, or looking at the other side of the quadrant here. And this is, if you've never seen this before, this is the cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. That's where this comes from. And he talks about where's our income derived. So I spent 28 years as an employee for a large manufacturing corporation. And now I am in this quadrant here as a self-employed business owner. Well, ideally, this is my target. I want to be over here in a bigger business, one that involves a team. And so this is the model for that, where you have products and services. This is, again, comes from Robert's book, The Cash Flow Quadrant. He talks about there's legal compliance you have to take care of, systems implementations for our goals. Some things we can automate, and it creates the repetition that is necessary to develop those habits and make things flow easier and smoother. Communications is a huge part. It's a paradigm in itself, because before I went to school, I always thought business was about the numbers. It was a administrative thing. It was all about keeping books and the records and crunching the numbers and everything. But it wasn't until I finished school and went through a couple of communications courses that I realized that my strengths, I feel, lie more in this area than I did in the math side of business. So that was an aha moment for me. It was why I'm doing this today, is because I'm exercising those skills, abilities, those talents, the things that motivate me. Below that, and we're coming down to the foundation now, cash flow and administration. Again, this is a necessary part, because if we don't sell products, we don't have anything to account for as cash flow. And the administrative side of it is there's nothing to account for. The very basis or the foundation of any business is their mission. You build a team, and here's again the leadership that we're talking about. This is where this fits in, because you have stakeholders, internal and external, and it includes customers and vendors. So all these things are important. Now, next week is where we'll talk about having a compelling scoreboard, and this is where we're talking about, we get into managing our priorities and achieving our goals. It's how do we persevere through the storms of life, the adversity and the things that get in our way and come up every day, and just trying to accomplish things. So that's what we're going to cover next week. And this is probably can be the most stressful part of our life. We're going to devote some time to that. Now, here's, I call it homework, but it's up to the individual that wants to participate. This is the links to all our content. You can find me at Actions by Design on Facebook. And then we have a group called Getting from X to Y. It's a closed group, so you can see it, but until you're a member of it, you really can't participate in it. And then that leads to, once you become a member of that group, that leads to our private Ambassadors Lounge group. That is where I have uploaded all the content that you can download for free. You can review these lessons, the outlines, and download the available free resources that I put there. I also have a blog site, and I didn't mention this a little bit up above there. There's a link. So it's a bookmark blog site, and if you have interesting articles that you want to share, you can create backlinks for your websites by posting a link. It's simple. You just go to this actionsbydesign.blog. At the top, there's a button that says Post a Link, and you just fill that in, choose a category, and then basically post that, and your content gets posted on the blog site. So that is another resource, another benefit for being a member of our group and following along with us here. So again, if you'd like to be our guest speaker, a guest participant on a future live webinar like we're doing today, please contact me at the email address here. It's isims42@actionsbydesign.marketing. Then we also have previously recorded live webinars will be archived at my YouTube channel, the Actions by Design YouTube channel. And you can find them on our Facebook, the fan page at actionsbydesign.net. That's where the live stream is feeding to right now currently. So please remember to like us on Facebook as well. And you can inbox me on Messenger. I think that's it for this week. I want to thank you for being on here. We'll be here again. I'm just running through the slides again one more time for you. So if you missed anything, let me know. You can also raise your hand. There should be a thing on the right-hand side where you can raise your hand if you have questions during the seminar or the webinar. Okay, and I'm going to, once we get through these slides again here, then I will say goodbye for this week, and we'll look forward to our next one. All right, thank you.